So this is an affront to heaven. I mean, there are 4 sins that cry out to God: shedding innocent blood, Sodom and Gomorrah, sodomy, abusing orphans and widows, and slavery, withholding a man's wages, which is slavery. So slavery was settled with horrific bloodshed. Abraham Lincoln said in his second inaugural address, in so many words, that this was the judgment of God. Could it be that every drop of blood that was drawn by the master's whip is going to be shed on a field of battle? I am afraid, for the first time in my life, I'm actually afraid for the future of our country, because I feel like we've crossed some Rubicon. Something's going to happen, because there is a God in heaven. Even if the judges want to pretend he's not there, there is a God in heaven, and he hasn't rescinded his authority.
And not only are you refuting the institution God first ordained, but you're undermining the very foundation upon which all our society is built. It must be built on something. It's built on family. And when you take away the meaning of family, and that's what they've done.
Well,
they haven't
family as
redefined
defined
family.
by God. That's the issue. Is that,
right.
In other words, before family was God himself. So the traditional values argument, I think, is very dangerous for Christians to take the bait, because the question is, whose tradition? I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah had a tradition. So it's that God gave us family.
Yeah.
And
well, I think that's something that they didn't recognize in this opinion. And they recognized that we were evolving as in the word marriage. They destroyed the definition of marriage. They haven't really given us one. Their reasoning would apply equally well to polygamous marriages.
Yep. One of the justices said that.
And one of the justices basically said that.
Yep.
So,
what role do you believe that God plays in the body politic, in civil government?
well, I think he had a hand in our Constitution, according to Madison, according to nearly every one of the founding fathers, that he looks over our society. He's not some God that doesn't take an interest. And, you know, when we cry out to him, and he answers our prayers. I think one of the best quotes about that was back in 1863. And it said, whereas one of the proclamations of the president back then was, whereas it is the duty of nations as well as of men to own their dependence on the overruling power of God, confess their sins and transgressions in humble sorrow, yet with assured hope that genuine repentance will lead to mercy and pardon. And it goes on and it says basically...
Those are preaching words.
It says, have we now forgotten that powerful friend? We've been the recipient of the choicest bounties of heaven. We've been preserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We've grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no other nation has ever grown, but we've forgotten God. And that was in 1863.
What role do you think the laws of God play in the body politic?
Well, the laws of God are, you know, the Ten Commandments basically are underlying our foundation of moral society. They illustrate religious freedom. Back in the dictionary in 1838, I believe it was, 1828, Webster's dictionary, it was defined as the religion and morality were the first and second tables of the law, referring to the Ten Commandments. Right. Washington said in his farewell address, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. He was referring basically to the law of God. Right.
Christian morality.
The first table being the duties we owe to God, and the second being the duties we owe to each other, our virtue or morality. Today,
when you say table, you mean also tablet. In other words, there's two tablets to the law. The first rules, or the first laws.
They call them tables of the law.
Right.
And they also call them tablets.
Right. For the viewer who's,
sure.
I love your use and addiction to Old English.
Well, it's just.
But we can't suffer the words to confuse the viewer.
Yeah, I understand.
Do you believe that the judges violated their oath of office?
They're sworn to the Constitution. The Constitution has no word in it about marriage, and that's remarkable. If they're going to redefine a word that's not even in the Constitution, how is that not a violation of the 10th Amendment, which states clearly that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. There's no power given to the federal government as Justice Kennedy in his own writing in 2013 in U.S. versus Windsor recognized. There is no power given to the federal government over marriage. That was left to the states. And today that's been taken, and a majority has dictated that to the states.
Okay, there's so many politicians right now who are saying that this is outside of the rule of law, that they went beyond their constitutional authority. So we
Very
hear
clearly.
we hear all these words, but then if that is the case, is this an impeachable offense?
Well, 4 justices on the Supreme Court, that being Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Scalia, Justice Thomas, and Justice Alito, all said that about the opinion.
Right, that this is basically a lawless.
It was completely outside the Constitution.
Well, friend, I'm going to continue tomorrow and the next day with 3 segments of this nearly hour-long interview. 2 quick things. Number 1, don't take the bait. There are people who want to discuss so-called homosexual marriage in a godless framework. A good man, Tony Perkins, recently did an op-ed piece in USA Today, and he made a fatal mistake. He never mentioned God. He never mentioned the church. He never mentioned Jesus Christ. He never mentioned the scriptures. He never mentioned the 10 Commandments, the laws of God. Nothing. It was a godless argument. It was about money, education, stability. It misses the point. If all of those things were equal with regular marriage, then what? It's still an affront to God. It's still a sin against heaven. Please, if you enjoy the show, here's the other thing. Help us financially. We exist completely because of your gifts. And if you want to see the entire interview without break, you can go to our website. It's right there on the screen. Hope that you'll join us tomorrow night in this exclusive interview with Judge Roy Moore.